Hey guys, what's going on? So today I'm talking a little bit about edification, right? So edification is basically an emotional tool we use to lift up other people in order to get a promotion back from that person, right? So I'll go into greater detail on that later. But first I wanted to touch on basically how people make decisions, right? So people make decisions based on emotion and not really logic, right? So in my experience, it's about 1 in 20 people that make a decision based on logic, right? So when you're showing the plan, when you're contacting, you want to be appealing to everyone's emotional side whilst showcasing the facts, right? Because by doing that, you're appealing to the emotional side, so you're getting that 19 in 20 people, right? But then you're also showcasing the facts in an objective manner. So you're getting that 1 in 20 that make logic, right? So that kind of, framework is going to give you the best results possible, right? Because you're appealing to both logic and emotion then, right? But yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind that most people make their decisions out of emotion, right? So they don't do it for purely logical reasons because we are emotional beings, right? Every time we're happy, every time we're sad, we're happy due to our emotions, not due to logic, right? We're not computers at the end of the day. We are people and we do feel things differently from, well, a computer is unfeeling, right? So yeah. In order to be successful, you basically need to appeal to both emotion and logic. And edification can be a great tool to build your business, right? So I talked about it a little earlier, but edification, it's basically like building a positive image of someone that your downline hasn't met, right? So it'll be your upline. So you're building a positive image of your upline to your downline before they've met, right? So basically you want to pick things that are real. You don't want to be lying, right? But you're talking very highly about this person, and you're basically making them larger than life, right? Because when we hear about things that someone's done, since we don't know much about that person, it becomes like their entire personality and their entire being, right? And we think they're this amazing person that can do no wrong because all we've heard is positivity, right? And it is very apparent in the business. Like, so when you're building the business and you edify everyone around you, it multiplies your success. It's amazing, really. Like, it's such a simple tool, and it sounds arbitrary that it works, but it works to an amazing degree, right? So it's basically like that two-way promotion thing I was talking about earlier, right? So if I edify my upline to my downline, right? And I just keep edifying my upline, I'm just saying all these great things. Yeah, so he's been financially free since he was 14, stuff like that. Like, obviously that's ridiculous, but stuff in that same area. When my downline meets my upline, they're going to be like, yeah, James said all these great things about you. And then my upline's going to be like, oh yeah, he's a humble guy though. He wouldn't tell you any of the stuff about him. And then he'll edify me back, right? So in that way, it becomes kind of a two-way promotion where I don't have to edify myself because that doesn't actually work, which I'll touch on later. So I don't have to edify myself. I have to edify my upline, and then my upline edifies me back, right? And by doing that, the downline sees us both as these very valuable people that he doesn't want to waste the time of, right? So a couple examples of edification is so your old teacher or your old principal, right? If you ran into them on the street, your first reaction would be to address them as Mr. or Mrs., right? And that's basically because when you were younger and when you were in school and when they were your teacher, when they were your principal, they instilled this sense of respect, right? They're someone that you need to respect and someone that you need to address as Mr. or Mrs. To call them by their first name like they're a normal person is considered rude, right? So you've still got this ingrained edification from when you were younger. And that is an example of edification. And it is apparent because I've ran into my teachers and I'd be like, oh, it's Mr. Smith or whatever, So you can also de-edify people, right? And that's basically talking poorly about someone. So if I have a wife and she comes home and she's just talking very poorly about her boss, he's not going to give me a raise. He's put me on warning, so I'm under review for the next 6 months. I'm going to have a really low image, and that's the first thing that I've heard about the boss. I'm going to have a really low image of the boss, right? Because all I've heard is negativity, right? So yeah, that's basically de-edification. It's just talking poorly about someone, and the person that hasn't met them sees them in a really negative light because they haven't heard anything positive, so they don't think there is anything positive, right? Um, the other example of edification is like if you needed surgery, right? And you're lying on the surgery bed and it's emergency surgery, and then the cleaning staff comes up, looks at your board, and says, "Oh, you've got Dr. Smith. Good luck." Right? So that would not give you confidence in the doctor's a good doctor, right? But if the same cleaning staff came up and he's just like, "Oh my God, you have Dr. Smith? I didn't even know he was in the country right now. I thought he was doing like a press conference in America. You're so lucky," right? You would have a completely different perspective on that doctor's capabilities, right? And that the first example was de-edification. The second example was obviously edification, right? So the other thing is that you can edify yourself, right? So I mentioned it a little earlier. So imagine if the doctor came up and was like, "You're so lucky to have me. I'm amazing," you know? Like, you'd just be like, "Okay, what are you doing?" You know what I mean? Like, I don't have any more faith in you because you said that. That's just ridiculous. So you can't really edify yourself because it just comes across as like cocky, right? It just comes across as like bigoted. So what we do is we edify our uplines, and then when we edify enough, we get that edification in return because the person we've been edifying to mentions it, basically, right? So I went over that earlier. So how do we actually apply it in the business now, right? So I've talked about the downline, upline edification, but you can also edify a new contact, right? So when you do a QI, for example, you're going to edify your group to the new person, right? So a QI is basically, you're not the magic, you're just like, you're in the same boat as them, right? So you'll be like, "Oh, I'm working with a group of really successful entrepreneurs. They're trying to establish like a team in this area, and they told me to be on the lookout for someone from a trade background, right?" So you're not the magic, right? You're edifying your team. You're saying there are a bunch of successful entrepreneurs. So all the questions that this person has, they're not going to be directed at you. They're going to be directed at the successful entrepreneurs, right? So that's kind of how you edify in the business. That's like a practical application, right? And when you are doing it like that, when you invite them to the plan, you don't say, "Oh, come on, I'll show you the plan." You say, "Come meet this person that I've been edifying," right? Because they're gonna want to meet the person that you've been talking so highly of, right? And then you can add like a little extra bit and be like, "But make sure you come prepared because he's a person of immense value, and I'm amazed that he's even sacrificing his time to be with us tonight." So like little things like that, they go a long way in the person's subconscious belief of who that person is, right? And yeah, I touched on this a little earlier, but basically you want to edify things that are real, okay? You don't want to be lying because, well, like, you have integrity, right? You want to have integrity so that you're a good leader and people want to follow you. So don't make things up, but you can sell the truth a little bit, right? So you can be like, "Oh, he's an amazing entrepreneur. He's been financially free since I think like 24, 25. See, even if that's not true, I've just said I think. So like you kind of got a bit of leeway there, but obviously you still want to be in the realm of truth. And yeah, so the biggest part of edification is actually the introduction, right? So it's how the person is introduced to the person that hasn't met them. And this is so important because the person that hasn't met the person being edified yet, we'll call them, the upline is the person being edified, the downline is the person being edified to, right? So the downline hasn't met the upline yet, right? So when you edify throughout the introduction, they're seeing this person, they're hearing your words, and they're putting all this positive image towards the person they can see in front of them, right? So about 95% of edification and getting the edification right is the introduction, right? So you can work on this with your upline. It's not completely up to you how you do this. It can be if you want it to be, but the pressure's off, right? So you can work with your upline and you can figure out with them what the right things to say is, what the wrong things to say is, and basically the general feel you want to get across is I'm working with this person, I respect this person, and they know what they're doing, right? Those are the three things that you really want to communicate through your edification, right? And the more edification that you have going on in your group, the faster your group is going to grow, right? That's just a general rule, right? Because the more edification you have going on, the more people are getting involved in the business, and people aren't going to waste someone of time's value, right? I said it before, but it is extremely true. And that is the true value of edification. Everyone's going to come to meet this person that's being edified productively, right? Because they're not going to want to waste some successful entrepreneur's time that they're lucky to even sit down with, right? No one's going to waste that person's time. They're just not, right? And the last thing I'll mention is, if you're ever in the position to get edified, which you should be at some point as a leader, don't let it go to your head, right? You have to kind of tune that out, because whilst what they're saying is like an exaggerated truth, you can't let it go to your head, because then your ego gets big and then you get less teachable and you'll basically lose momentum, right? So a little tip I do is I always like fiddle with something. So I'll like play with something in my pocket. I'll still look like I'm paying attention, but I'll try my hardest to not be listening, right? Because I don't want to hear that edification, because I understand that even subconsciously it can just go straight to your head, and that affects your attitude, that affects your results, that affects everything, right? So that's everything, guys. Have a good day.